To avoid ever having to work hard again, a man quit his job, which paid only $3,000 a month, and packed up all his worldly possessions. He headed for the desolate shores of Lake Baikal, intending to spend the rest of his life practicing his lying flat philosophy. Following a recommendation from a local villager, he spent $8,000 to buy a small lakeside cabin from an old hunter. Though the space was cramped, it offered total seclusion. For miles in every direction, the wilderness was essentially his private backyard. After the transaction was complete, the hunter left behind a shotgun. His intent was to warn the sucker who bought his shack that living alone here was dangerous, but Teddy, his heart set on freedom, didn't give it a second thought. On the contrary, once the others left, he couldn't help but let out an excited shout. This was now his private domain. He could do whatever he wanted without the judgmental eyes of others. Finally living his dream of an unrestrained life, Teddy spent some time sliding wildly across the ice before returning to the cabin, satisfied. He began to inspect the home where he would spend the rest of his life. It was undeniably primitive, but manageable for a man living alone. Teddy fell into a deep sleep and didn't wake until evening. The weather outside was treacherous and unpredictable, and the city boy was about to receive his first harsh lesson from Mother Nature. His food crate had frozen solid, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pry it open. Defeated, he had to settle for 2 packets of ketchup for dinner just to stave off the hunger. Worse, he was parched. When he opened his canteen, he found it bone dry. Braving the biting wind, he retrieved a chunk of ice from the doorstep and put it in a pot to melt. After drinking half a pot of sweet, icy water, he crawled into his sleeping bag, hoping to sleep until dawn. However, having never lived in -40°C conditions, he was a total novice. In the middle of the night, the cold nearly turned him into a block of ice. Realizing he had forgotten to stoke the fire, he hurriedly tossed several logs into the stove, and the temperature in the bedroom slowly began to rise. The next morning, Teddy stood alone on the frozen lake for a long time. For the first time in over 30 years, he was truly away from the clamor of the crowd. He soaked in the hard-won silence before moving his supplies inside. He did some light decorating, removing redundant curtains and filling the shelves with his books. The old, dusty layout was instantly refreshed. That night, as heavy snow fell outside, he sat comfortably on his bed, watching the unique scenery until he drifted off. The next day was another no-work day. He slept until he woke naturally, feasted on specially seasoned roasted meat, and took a swig of strong spirits to warm his body. With his shotgun over his shoulder, he strolled through his backyard. Compared to the fast pace of the city, time here flowed slowly, making him feel entirely free from the shackles of life. One night, a strange, booming rumble echoed from outside. Creeping out to investigate, Teddy realized it was the sound of the lake ice cracking. Driven by curiosity, he lay flat on the ground, listening to the magnificent music of nature. The following day, Teddy used his tools to hack a hole in the ice. With a steady source of water, he finally treated himself to a hot bath. Still not satisfied, he plunged his entire body into the freezing lake water, experiencing the exhilarating fire and ice sensation. Suddenly, a brown bear appeared in his line of sight. Fortunately, the bear changed its mind and targeted the house instead of him. Teddy took the opportunity to bolt into a nearby outhouse before he could freeze to death. He waited until the bear finally wandered off before he dared to creep out. His home was a disaster. The bear had ransacked the place, and his once ample food supply was nearly gone. It was then that he realized why the previous owner had given him the shotgun. With no food left, Teddy tried his hand at hunting. However, he had zero experience. He finally spotted some prey, but because his aim was so poor, the shot went wide and scared the animal away. To make matters worse, while chasing the prey, he accidentally stepped into a trap. Thanks to the high quality of his boots, he only suffered a minor flesh wound. Unable to hunt for himself, he decided to head to a supply post on the opposite side of the lake to buy provisions. Teddy put on his skates, hitched up a sled, and skated across the ice for 5 grueling hours, reaching his destination just before dark. While staying overnight, he told the shop owner about his recent troubles. The owner told him that seeing a brown bear foraging in this season was rare. The bear was likely sick. As for the trap, the owner shared a story from the past. 13 years ago, a man committed a murder and fled into that forest. The trap Teddy stepped in was likely set by that man. However, the owner was certain the man was long dead. No one could survive alone out there for that many years. Hearing this explanation finally put Teddy's mind at ease. The next day, as Teddy prepared to head back, the owner warned him that a massive blizzard was coming and told him to bolt his doors and stay inside. Teddy made a fatal mistake. He severely underestimated how long the blizzard would last. His prepared firewood ran out quickly, forcing him to brave the raging winds to fetch more from outside. But the storm was more violent than he imagined. By the time he grabbed the wood, the whiteout had completely erased his vision. He struggled forward, clutching the logs, but without a sense of direction, he soon realized he was wandering further away. Exhaustion took over, and he realized he was utterly lost. In despair, he screamed into the wind and fired his gun into the sky, but his struggles were swallowed by the storm. He collapsed, ready to die. Just as death was closing in, a miracle happened. A figure appeared and rescued the unconscious Teddy. When he woke the next morning, he was shocked to find himself alive and lying in his own cabin. The wood was neatly stacked, and a pot of steaming food was cooking on the stove. Teddy didn't have time to wonder. He rushed outside to find his savior. But the wilderness was empty, not a soul in sight, not even the sound of a bird. Giving up the search, he began practicing his shooting out of boredom. Suddenly, a bullet flew past and shattered a bottle in front of him. He spun around and saw a burly figure standing on the mountainside. This was undoubtedly the man who had saved his life. As the figure approached, Teddy greeted him in broken Russian. The two strangers tacitly avoided mentioning the blizzard, as if saving a life in a storm was a trivial matter. Noticing Teddy was practicing his aim, the strange man offered to teach him to shoot, on the condition that Teddy give him bullets as payment. With the man's simple guidance, Teddy hit the target on his very next shot. The man took the bullets, turned silently, and walked back toward the mountain. That night, Teddy tossed and turned. He guessed that the man was the fugitive the shop owner had mentioned. He was curious how the man had survived all these years, but he also wondered if he should tell him the news, that the outside world thought he was dead and was no longer hunting him. After a night of thinking, he decided to tell him. He searched the mountains for a long time and was about to give up when the man appeared behind him like a ghost. Teddy got straight to the point. "My name is Teddy. What's yours? Can you trust me?" Hearing Teddy's honest words, the man lowered his mask for the first time, revealing his face. He seemed unmoved by the news that he was no longer being hunted. It seemed that over a decade of isolation had made him forget how to react, even speaking seemed foreign to him. As a gesture of thanks, the man led Teddy into the forest, ready to teach him how to hunt for Real. After a long search, they finally spotted a moose. With a single, steady pull of the trigger, the moose fell instantly under the man's aim. Afterward, the stranger taught Teddy the grim but necessary art of butchering the prey. Once the meat was partitioned and brought back to Teddy's cabin, Teddy poured a glass of spirits for the silent man. The man stared at the glass, hesitating for a moment before knitting his brows and draining it in one gulp. Having not touched alcohol for 12 years, his body was no longer accustomed to it. Seizing the moment, Teddy asked him how long he had been out here. The man finally broke his silence. He told Teddy he had lived in these mountains for 12 years, though his original home was actually on the other side of Lake Baikal. When he asked Teddy what he did for a living back in the world, Teddy answered honestly. After a few brief words, the man seemed to lose interest in the conversation. "This is no place for humans to survive," he muttered. He shouldered his share of the meat and vanished into the trees. Early the next morning, while Teddy was chopping wood, a helicopter roared low over his head. Sensing something was wrong, he grabbed his shotgun and ran into the forest. The sound of intermittent gunfire echoing through the trees filled him with dread for the stranger's safety. Teddy soon discovered the source. A nouveau riche sportsman was in the area, hunting for entertainment. Teddy eventually reunited with the stranger, and together they followed a trail of blood to track a wounded brown bear. However, as they reached the mountain peak, a mass of black clouds pressed down silently. Alexei, experienced in the ways of the wild, knew this was the herald of a massive blizzard. It is said that going up a mountain is easy, but coming down is treacherous. The storm intensified so quickly they couldn't retreat. They were forced to grope through the whiteout until Alexei found a hollow, a hole he had dug long ago. They cleared the snow and crawled inside. While it blocked the wind, the temperature remained lethally low. To keep Teddy from falling into a terminal sleep, the man finally told his story. 12 years ago, he had crossed paths with his former commanding officer. They had spent the night drinking vodka. As the commander bragged about his success and wealth, Alexei looked at his own shattered, messy life and felt a growing sense of resentment. When the commander's wife began to mock him and tried to kick him out of the house, Alexei snapped. In a fit of blind rage, he picked up a fruit knife and committed the act that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Hearing this, Teddy didn't recoil. Instead, he felt his own defenses finally drop. When the blizzard passed, the two survivors looked at each other and shared a weary smile. Alexei eventually brought Teddy back to his own hidden cabin. Seeing the walls covered in tally marks tracking the passage of time, Teddy realized how agonizingly lonely these years must have been. Alexei showed Teddy a photo of his two children, his eyes filled with an unbearable longing. Teddy confessed that he came here to find out if he was spiritually broken, but found that he had never felt more alive. Alexei didn't argue, but he looked at Teddy with a knowing gaze. He knew Teddy was simply trying to run away from life. From that day on, the two became inseparable. They fished together, drank together, and discussed international news. They were like old friends who had known each other for lifetimes. On Teddy's birthday, he fired a signal flare from the mountaintop. Alexei watched it and murmured something cryptic. The next morning, hearing people approaching, Alexei instinctively fled into the woods to hide. Teddy hurriedly hid his belongings and climbed into bed, pretending to be asleep. It was the villagers from across the lake. They had seen the flare and come to check on him. They mentioned that someone wanted to buy his cabin, but Teddy refused without a second thought. As the ice on the lake began to thin, signaling the arrival of spring, Alexei stopped appearing. Worried, Teddy went to find him and discovered that Alexei was burning with a severe fever. Seeing Teddy fussing over him, Alexei mocked himself, saying it had been many years since anyone had cared for him. That night, seeing no improvement, Teddy offered to go to town for medicine. Alexei refused, looking at Teddy with gravity. "Can you stop crying?" he asked softly. The next morning, Teddy was chopping wood when he turned to see Alexei standing in the doorway. Alexei had written a letter in Russian that Teddy couldn't understand. He asked Teddy to deliver it to a specific location but warned him never to mention his existence to anyone. Teddy promised to return in 2 or 3 days. Alexei said nothing, but gripped Teddy's hand tightly. As Teddy walked away, Alexei couldn't help but call out his name one last time. Teddy reached the town, got the medicine, and eventually found the delivery address, a railway station. Realization hit him like a physical blow. He found a woman to translate the letter for him. The words were a message of strength. "You have made an effort, stay strong, keep going, do not be afraid, stand on your own 2 legs, yes, your own legs." With tears streaming down his face and a dark premonition in his heart, Teddy hired a car to rush back. Halfway there, the melting ice forced the car to stop. Desperate, he rented a motorcycle. Even as he shook from the freezing wind, he didn't slow down, praying his fears were just his imagination. But when he returned to the cabin, Alexei was gone. He had passed away peacefully. To the rest of the world, his departure was silent and unnoticed, but to Teddy, it was a cataclysm. Teddy did not bury Alexei in the earth. Instead, he rowed a boat out onto the partially thawed lake. Alexei had once told him, "If I die, throw me into Baikal." In that moment, Alexei was finally free. No more hiding, no more living in fear. He sank slowly into the depths, becoming one with the lake that had been his only companion for 12 years.